If you have Photoshop in around 10 minutes, I'm going to show how you can recreate this. The first thing that I did was add the first player image that I'm going to use. And then I go over to Camera Raw Filter. And the main thing that I'm looking to do while I'm in Camera Raw Filter is just enhance the texture and the clarity. And the first thing I did was lower the blacks to around -30. But I want to increase the texture and the clarity and the vibrance. I don't always keep these Camera Raw Filter settings either. Like sometimes I just want to really make the image pop more, like this one, and then I'll just take the Camera Raw Filter, I'll take it off after I go over to the selection tool and select and mask the player. Because the main reason that I'm doing the Camera Raw Filter first is so whenever I go over to the selection tool, like I'm doing right here, and go over to the object selection tool, click select subject, and then after it loads up, I just check to make sure most of the player is cut out, and then I go over to select and mask. And it usually does a pretty good job of cutting out what I want. And as you can see here, it did a pretty good job, but there's just a little bit of that black outline that I want to get rid of. So I go over down to the shift edge and I just lower it a little bit. And then after I have the player cut out the way I want, I'm going to go ahead and add, at first I added the 20/0 because that's what the record was whenever I did this. But then I ended up changing it just to the 20, as you can see, as you'll see later in the video. But for now, I added the 20/0, and I was just looking for a good font to use. And for now, this is the font that I chose to go with, and then like the size that I chose to go with. And then I just dragged that layer underneath the player image layer. Then the next thing that I did was add this player image, the second player image that I used. And once again, I go straight into Camera Raw Filter, and I just increase the texture and the clarity and then the vibrance. And obviously you saw the final graphic at the beginning of the video. This isn't the picture that I chose to go with, but I just chose to keep this in because it shows the way that I do it. And then after I get that cut out, I saw the way that it looked, and I didn't really like it that much, so I went ahead and switched over to this player image right here for the top image. And right here, I went over to texturelabs.org. It's where I get most of the backgrounds that I use. And I actually didn't end up keeping this background texture right here. I ended up using a different one, which I also found on Texture Labs, which is this one right here. And I just like the way it looked more. I thought it fit the graphic a little bit better. And the main reason I want to find like a darker background or something darker than white is so whenever I add in these tweets right here, I can just go over to the layers tab and then click darken, and it will get all the white on the tweet, like everything except the words and the profile image. But right here, you can see I originally went with this method, which was create like a rectangle over the tweet and then create a clipping mask into the rectangle. But I didn't like the way it looked. So like I said, I ended up changing it to where I just go over to the layers tab on the right side, the bottom right. And then instead of keeping it at normal, I put it at darken. But I just wanted to include this in the graphic because it shows how there's a few different ways you can include tweets into your graphic. And this rectangle method or whatever, I've used this a few times, but I didn't feel like it fit well with this particular graphic. The next thing that I went ahead and added to the graphic was a gradient layer. And I made it a red gradient layer, but as you can see right here, I just went over to the gradient tool on the left side and then added whatever color that I used last. And then I just double click on the gradient fill. And then I clicked around the jersey to try to find the red that I wanted to keep in. And then I go over to the other tab right here, and then I do the same thing. Or actually, I chose the gray instead of another red or the same red, just because I thought it fit the graphic a little bit better instead of making it fully red. And I didn't keep that second picture at the top. I ended up just keeping one, as you probably saw at the beginning. But right here, I'm just adding in more tweets and doing the same rectangle thing. So I'm just going to speed it up while I do this. And right here, I just went back over to Google and I wanted to add in some part of their stadium. I didn't really know what part because nothing was really standing out to me. I like the outside of the arena, but what I ended up liking about this image was the scoreboard. So I wanted to put that in the background somewhere. And at first I thought I was going to include more of the court, but I ended up going with really just a scoreboard, as you'll see at the end. So I add in the image and then I drag it all the way down to the lowest layer or the second lowest layer. And then I create a layer mask. And after I lower the opacity a little bit, I just go over to the brush tool and then I increase the brush a good amount to around like 600 or 700. Or you can, sometimes I even go bigger than that, around 800. And then I just want to fade this particular image just to fit the way that I want, with keeping mainly just a scoreboard in there. I didn't really like the way this picture looked, or like the scoreboard picture, so I wanted to add the black and white layer to see if that helped out at all. And I ended up keeping it like that just because I thought it looked pretty good. And as you can see here, I ended up going back to just the 2 images of the player. And like I said earlier, I changed it to just the number 20 instead of 20 and 0. I also added some text right here inside of the 20 just to show it's the first 21 season they've had since 1998. And I created a black and white layer right here for this player image on the bottom, the full body player image. And after creating the black and white layer, I created a layer mask for the black and white layer. And then I go over to the brush tool and I make sure it's on the color black. So I can go in here and erase the black and white layer on certain parts of the player image. And there's certain ways you can do this that are maybe more advanced, but this also works for me on smaller projects like this. As you can see right here, I also created a levels layer for the top player image that I used, and that's how I got like the darker looking photo. And I created another camera raw filter for it. And I wanted to make his name pop a little bit more, so I went ahead and got this blue verification check mark from Google, and I just dropped it on here, and then I clicked remove background, and then I just kind of drop it behind the name. And like I said earlier, the way that I got these tweets like this, instead of creating the clipping mask inside of the rectangle, I just go over to where it says normal right above his name right here. You see that the tab that says normal. You just click on that while you're on the tweet layer, and then you just click darken, and it will erase all the white and keep that. And then the final thing I do is go to the top layer, and then I hold down Control, Option, Shift, and E, and it masks all the layers together, so I can create one final camera raw filter. And it's kind of the same thing as I do before, which is just decreasing the blacks a little bit, increasing the texture and the clarity, and increasing the reds, and sometimes also the sharpening at the bottom. And then after you do the camera raw filter, here's the final result. And if you made it to the end, thank you for watching, and I'll be dropping more videos like this week. Thank you.